There is a strange confidence in modern moral language. You hear it everywhere, in academic debates, social media arguments, political speeches, and everyday conversations. People say things like, "That's unjust. That's morally wrong. No society should tolerate this. Some things are simply evil." What's interesting is not that these claims are made. What's interesting is how they're made. They're not offered tentatively. They're not framed as personal preferences. They're not presented as cultural suggestions. They are asserted as if they carry weight, as if they demand agreement, as if they bind us whether we like it or not. And this confidence appears just as strongly among people who reject God as among those who believe in Him. Tonight, we are not going to argue that atheists lack morality. That claim is false, simplistic, and intellectually lazy. Many atheists are deeply moral people. Many care passionately about justice, human rights, compassion, and equality. Some reject religion precisely because they believe it fails morally. So the question is not whether atheists can be moral. The question is something quieter and more unsettling. What kind of morality is being used? Because when atheists condemn evil, appeal to justice, or demand moral accountability, they often rely on a moral standard that feels bigger than culture, biology, or personal preference. A standard that judges us, even when no one agrees. Where does that standard come from? And why does it refuse to disappear? Part 1, The Atheist Moral Position, presented fairly. Let's begin by stating the atheist position as clearly and charitably as possible. Most contemporary atheists do not claim that morality is meaningless. Very few argue that anything goes. Instead, modern atheist moral frameworks tend to fall into several broad categories. 1. Evolutionary morality. In this view, moral instincts evolved because they promoted cooperation, survival, and group cohesion. Behaviors like empathy, fairness, and reciprocity helped early humans thrive. Cruelty and betrayal weakened groups and were selected against. Morality, then, is an adaptive feature, not a cosmic law. 2. Social contract ethics. Here, moral rules are agreements societies develop to minimize harm and maximize stability. We cooperate because cooperation benefits everyone. We prohibit murder because societies without such rules collapse. Morality is negotiated, revised, and enforced collectively. 3. Human flourishing models. Another approach grounds morality in well-being. Actions are moral insofar as they promote human flourishing, reduce suffering, and enhance quality of life. There is no divine command, only human interests and outcomes. 4. Moral anti-realism or constructivism. Some atheists go further and argue that moral statements are not objectively true or false at all. They are expressions of attitudes, emotions, or linguistic conventions. To say, "murder is wrong," is to express disapproval, not to state a fact about reality. Importantly, many atheists combine elements of these views. And many insist, quite rightly, that you don't need God to care about suffering, fairness, or dignity. So far, so good. But something interesting happens when we move from theory to practice. Part 2, How Atheists Actually Speak About Morality. Listen carefully to how moral language is actually used. When atheists criticize religious violence, they don't say, "This behavior doesn't align with my evolutionary preferences." They say, "This is morally wrong." When condemning genocide, they don't say, "This violates our current social agreement." They say, "This should never happen." When defending human rights, they don't say, "We find these values useful." They say, "Every human being deserves dignity." These are not descriptive claims. They are normative claims. They don't merely describe what is happening. They prescribe what ought to happen. They make demands. And demands imply authority. This is where the tension begins. Part 3, The Problem of Moral Obligation. Here's a key philosophical distinction that often goes unnoticed. There is a difference between explaining moral behavior and justifying moral obligation. Science can explain why humans feel empathy, why cooperation evolved, Why societies punish harmful behavior. But explanation is not justification. Explaining why we feel moral pressure does not explain why we should obey it. For example, evolution might explain why I feel guilt after lying. But evolution cannot tell me whether lying is actually wrong, or merely disadvantageous in certain contexts. This distinction matters, because moral language doesn't merely describe feelings. It commands. It says, you should not do this, even if you want to. This is wrong, even if everyone approves. You are accountable, even if no one is watching. That sense of accountability is difficult to reduce to biology or consensus. Part 4. Why evolution cannot ground moral authority. Let's look more closely at evolutionary explanations. Evolutionary theory can plausibly explain how moral instincts arose. But moral truth is not the same as moral origin. If morality is nothing more than an evolutionary adaptation, then moral rules are ultimately contingent. They depend on survival conditions. Which means, if cruelty helps survival, cruelty becomes moral. If oppression strengthens a group, oppression becomes justified. If deception increases reproductive success, deception becomes good. But that's not how moral judgments are made. Even when cruelty is advantageous, we condemn it. Even when oppression stabilizes a society, we reject it. Even when lies protect us, we feel guilt. This suggests that morality is treated as something that judges evolutionary outcomes, not something created by them. We don't say, this evolved, therefore it is right. We say, this is right, even if it evolved otherwise. That reversal is important, because it implies that morality stands above biology, not beneath it. Part 5. Moral progress without moral truth? Now consider the idea of moral progress. Most atheists believe that humanity has made moral progress. They believe slavery is worse than abolition. That women's rights are an improvement. That racial equality is morally better than segregation. But progress implies a direction. And direction implies a standard. Progress means moving toward something. But toward what? If morality is merely cultural preference, then change is not progress, just difference. A society that abolishes slavery is not better than one that practices it. It is merely different. Yet almost no one accepts that conclusion. We don't say, slavery is wrong for us. We say, slavery is wrong, period. Even when practiced by ancient cultures. Even when widely accepted. Even when legally enforced. Which means moral truth is being treated as something that transcends time, culture, and consensus. But transcendent standards don't sit comfortably inside a purely materialist worldview. Part 6. The limits of social contracts. What about morality as social agreement? At first glance, this seems promising. Societies create rules to reduce harm. People cooperate because it benefits everyone. But contracts only bind those who accept them. What about those who don't? What about tyrants who reject the rules? Societies that vote for injustice. Majorities that oppress minorities. If morality is contractual, then power replaces truth. Whoever controls the contract defines the moral rules. Yet this is precisely what moral discourse resists. When people condemn unjust laws, they don't say, this law violates our agreement. They say, this law is unjust. Which means the law itself is judged by a higher standard. A standard above the contract. Part 7. Human dignity. A borrowed concept. Few ideas are invoked more often, or more confidently, than human dignity. Atheists defend it. Religious believers defend it. International law is built on it. But what exactly is dignity? Is it intelligence? Then infants and the disabled have less. Is it autonomy? Then the unconscious lose it. Is it usefulness? Then the weak are expendable. Most people reject these conclusions instinctively. They insist that dignity is inherent, not earned. But inherent dignity implies intrinsic value. And intrinsic value is difficult to ground in a universe composed solely of particles and forces. Atoms don't have dignity. Processes don't have worth. Functions don't generate obligation. Yet dignity is treated as real, inviolable, unquestionable. Where does that value come from? Part 8. The moral grammar we inherited. Here is the quiet historical reality. The moral language modern atheists use did not originate in atheism. Concepts like inherent human worth, universal moral obligation, equal dignity, justice beyond power, emerges historically from worldviews that saw reality itself as morally structured, where goodness was not invented but discovered. You can reject that worldview. But when you keep its moral grammar, tension arises. It's like denying mathematics while still using equations. The tools keep working, but their foundation is missing. Part 9. Is this an argument for God? Not directly. This is not a proof. It is a question of coherence. If morality is objective, binding, universal, authoritative, then reality must be capable of grounding value. Not just describing behavior, but prescribing obligation. That doesn't automatically lead to a specific religion. But it does challenge the idea that morality is merely accidental. Part 10. Why this matters. This matters because moral realism changes everything. It means evil is real, not just disliked. Justice matters, even when ignored. Human beings have worth, even when unwanted. And if those things are true, reality is not morally indifferent. Something deeper is at work. Conclusion. The question that refuses to disappear. Atheism speaks powerfully about morality. But it often does so in a voice borrowed from a deeper tradition. A tradition that believed goodness was written into reality itself. You don't have to accept that tradition. But the question remains. Why does morality feel so real, so binding, so unavoidable, in a universe that supposedly doesn't care? That question doesn't demand belief. But it demands honesty. And perhaps that honesty points somewhere unexpected.